My name is Isabella Shepherd, but everyone calls me Bella. I'm 29 years old. And if I'm honest, I thought by now I'd be planning a wedding, not reliving the moment my heart cracked open on a Tuesday night in our cramped apartment kitchen. The words Henry spat at me that evening will never leave me. My parents would be mortified if I married someone like you. They didn't come with the shout. No slammed fists or angry accusations, just a quiet dismissal, his lips pressed into that thin line I'd come to recognize as the signal decision made no discussion needed. I stared at him across the cluttered table where half-eaten pad thai had already gone cold. The tang of soy sauce made me nauseous. My fork slipped from my hand. For 3 years, Henry had been my partner, my safe place, I thought. We shared everything from inside jokes about our eccentric landlord to long nights huddled under a single blanket, whispering about the future. But now, he sat there with the detachment of someone canceling a subscription. "Explain," I said, though my voice didn't even sound like mine. It was too calm, detached, almost clinical. Henry sighed. The kind of sigh people reserve for a child who keeps asking why. "Come on, Bella, be realistic. You're sweet. But my family expects more. My dad's friends' kids are all lawyers, bankers. And you," he gestured vaguely toward me, "you manage a hardware store." A year ago, that same hardware store had kept him afloat when his internship ended suddenly. I'd worked double shifts to cover our rent. I'd even put my savings toward his bar prep course. But that part of the story didn't fit his version of reality tonight. My gaze dropped to his phone on the table. It buzzed once, lighting up with a name I'd already noticed earlier, Maya. A law school classmate. Heart emojis littered their thread, along with a photo of them perched on a rooftop bar last weekend. The same weekend, he'd sworn he was pulling an all-nighter in the library. I flicked the phone across the table toward him. So this is part of being realistic, too. For a moment, I thought he'd flinch. He didn't. He actually smiled sheepish but unashamed. Maya's family is connected. Her uncle's a judge. My parents already adore her. Look, Bella, you'll find someone who doesn't care about this stuff. Someone who won't embarrass me. Embarrass. The word hit harder than mortified. I stood carefully enough that the chair didn't scrape. My body was trembling, but clarity coursed through me like ice water. "You're right," I said softly. "I am simple. Simple enough to know when I'm not wanted." The phone buzzed again, Maya probably checking in on her prize. He didn't even look ashamed. I walked to the bedroom, pulled my duffel bag from the closet. Henry trailed after me, incredulous. "Wait, you're leaving now, Bella? It's 11 p.m. Where are you even going?" "Anywhere but here." I shoved in jeans, socks, toothbrush. My hands moved fast, like they knew if I slowed down, I'd break. "God, you're so dramatic," he scoffed. "I didn't mean tonight. We can talk." I zipped the bag, meeting his eyes with a steadiness that surprised even me. "You didn't ask if I could change. You didn't give me a chance. You just decided I was beneath you. Congratulations, Henry. You're unembarrassed now." The front door closed behind me with a click that sounded far too gentle for the violence it carried. I didn't cry in the car. Not yet. Instead, numbness wrapped around me like a shield. That eerie peace people talk about right before the pain sets in. Clara. My oldest friend didn't ask questions when I showed up at her apartment at midnight with a duffel bag. She just pressed a beer into my hand and said, "He finally did it, huh?" I nodded, said his parents would be mortified if he married me. Clara snorted bitter amusement flickering in her eyes. "Funny. Didn't seem mortified when you paid for his bar prep or when you fixed their broken furnace last winter." I didn't answer, just took a long drink and stared at the ceiling. The next morning, my phone buzzed with 17 missed calls. Texts stacked one after the other. "Bella, we need to talk." "Bella, you can't just leave like that. Are you seriously ignoring me?" I didn't even open them. I deleted the whole thread. Then I blocked his number. Social media gone. Unfollowed, unfriended, blocked. I didn't post some cryptic breakup quote. I didn't change my profile picture to something fierce and dramatic. I just erased myself from his world as if I'd never existed there at all. When Clara saw me doing it, she shook her head. "Cold," she said. "No," I replied quietly. Cold would be telling his parents why I left. For the first time since Henry's words had shattered my world, I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, it did, but because I realized something. Silence could be louder than any explanation, and I intended to let that silence roar. The first few mornings without Henry were a strange kind of quiet. No sound of his alarm at 6 a.m., no clatter of him making coffee he never bothered to share, just silence broken only by Clara's cat pawing at the bedroom door, demanding breakfast like nothing had changed. It was almost comforting. But the pain came creeping in when I least expected it, folding laundry and finding the sweatshirt Henry once loaned me scrolling past a song we used to play while cooking dinner. It wasn't sharp pain, more like a dull, bruising ache pressing from the inside out. I decided I wouldn't let that ache fester. So one afternoon, I gathered every single reminder of him, every gift, every trinket, every object tied to his presence. The scratchy sweater his mom had insisted I wear. The watch he got me for my birthday, swearing it was just as stylish as the brand I'd once admired. Even the framed photo of us at the lake, the one where my hair was windblown and his smile was wider than I'd ever seen. I boxed them all. No note, no explanation, just the weight of 3 years in cardboard. Then I left the box at his apartment door, rang the bell, and walked away before he could answer. Clara shook her head when I told her later. You know he'll see this as petty. Maybe, I said. But silence speaks louder. This way, he doesn't get to spin the story. He just gets the mess he left behind. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Henry didn't stay quiet for long. The calls started again this time from numbers I didn't recognize, unknown. Then another, then another. I blocked each one after the first ring. One slipped through. Bella, we need to talk. This isn't mature. I laughed out loud alone in Clara's kitchen. Mature. That was rich. Dumping me for a woman his parents preferred was apparently mature, but cutting ties clean was not. I didn't reply. I just blocked that number too. Clara caught me grinning. What? He's panicking. I held up my phone, now blissfully silent. Good, she said simply, topping off her wine. The gossip trickled in from mutual friends because, of course, people love a breakup story almost as much as a wedding announcement. Henry and Maya are like inseparable one friend, texted me the kind who pretended neutrality but clearly thrived on drama. They're always posting from rooftop bars and fancy dinners. Another message followed days later. But honestly, people are side-eyeing her. She's loud, and not in a fun way, more like condescending. I tucked my phone into my pocket, forcing myself not to gloat. The temptation was strong. I could almost picture Maya flashing her connections like credit cards, belittling waiters pretending Henry's status was higher than it really was. But I didn't need to see it, didn't need to prove anything. Instead, I focused on my self-work night classes, the strange new freedom of not tiptoeing around someone else's insecurities. Still, the nights weren't always easy. Sometimes I'd lie awake on Clara's pull-out couch, the city's hum filtering through the window. Memories would creep in, uninvited Henry, carrying me piggyback down the street after my heels broke the way he once kissed my hand, absent-mindedly, during a movie. For a few seconds, my chest would tighten, and I'd wonder if I'd thrown away something salvageable. But then I'd hear his words again, mortified, embarrassed. That reminder was enough. One Saturday morning, Clara and I sat on her balcony sipping coffee. She watched me scroll through my phone, lips pursed. You don't post anything anymore, she said. I don't feel the need to, I answered. She tapped her mug thoughtfully. You know, Bella, sometimes the best revenge is not proving you're better. It's just living like you never needed him. I smiled. That's the plan. And it really was. Weeks passed. Henry's name faded from my notifications, though I knew he hadn't given up. A friend of his even messaged me once saying, Henry says he's worried about you. You're acting weird. Weird. Because I wasn't begging. Because I'd vanished instead of clinging. Let him think I was weird. Let his parents wonder why I'd stopped playing the part of the dutiful girlfriend. Let Maya believe she'd won. None of them knew the truth yet, that I'd stopped auditioning for their approval the moment I walked out that door. And one day they'd see exactly what that meant. That night, I dreamt of Henry for the first time since leaving. In the dream, he was smiling, holding out his hand. But when I reached for him, the hand turned to ash in mine, sifting through my fingers. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. Clara stirred from her room. You okay? Yeah, I whispered, pressing a hand over my chest. Just finally letting go. And maybe in some strange way I was. I didn't hear Henry's voice again for months. Not directly, but echoes of him reached me in whispers, text messages, and half-smirks from people who seemed delighted to update me on his perfect new life. At first, the story was predictable. Henry had taken Maya home to meet his parents. His mom adored her polished dresses, his dad admired her connections. Henry beamed beside her, like a child showing off a prize at a school fair. But perfection rarely holds when it's built on performance. And soon the cracks began to show. It was Lily, Henry's younger sister, who gave me the first glimpse. She called me out of nowhere one night, her voice hushed like she was confessing a crime. Bella, I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I need to tell you. Maya's not who she pretends to be. I sat on Clara's couch legs curled under me, listening as Lily spilled the truth. Apparently, Maya had criticized their father during a family dinner, called him outdated for insisting Henry wear a jacket to the table. The man who'd always treated me kindly, even when I felt his disapproval, was left speechless. And Henry, he just laughed awkwardly, trying to smooth things over. She doesn't respect anyone, Bella Lily continued. Last week she skipped Mom's birthday dinner, said she had an important networking event. My mom cried after everyone left. I felt a pang, unexpected and sharp. I remembered baking cupcakes with Lily for that same birthday the year before, remembered how Henry's mom had hugged me and whispered, "You're already family." Now apparently that family was discovering how hollow Henry's choice really was. Then came the truth about his career. For years, Henry had bragged about being basically on track to make partner. He'd paint pictures of late nights in the office, big cases, high-powered meetings. But the reality Lily described was different. Henry still hadn't passed the bar exam. He was working as a paralegal again, and Maya, rather than supporting him, used it as a punchline. She told my cousin that Henry was too distracted to pass. She mocked him in front of people Lily said disgust lacing her tone. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, silence heavy on my tongue. I didn't want to gloat, but the bitter satisfaction was undeniable. This was the man who had told me I wasn't good enough. Clara noticed the way my lips twitched upward that night as I recounted Lily's stories. "You're enjoying this," she teased. I hesitated, maybe a little. "Is that awful?" She shrugged. "Awful, no. Human, definitely." She leaned closer, her voice softening. "But don't let his downfall be the only thing that feeds you. That's still letting him control your story." I thought about that long after she went to bed. Still, the updates kept coming, and each one painted Henry's new life in darker shades. Maya no-showed at his parents' anniversary dinner, texting Henry that she wasn't going to parade herself for elitist relatives. When Henry's father suffered a minor heart scare, Maya refused to accompany him to the hospital. "Babe hospitals give me anxiety. Text me if it's serious," she'd said. I tried to imagine myself in her place. If it had been Henry's father during our relationship, I would have been there in minutes, holding his mother's hand, making tea for Lily. That was the difference Maya would never bridge. One night, lying in bed, I admitted something out loud to myself, to the empty ceiling above me. "I still ache," I whispered. Because I did. The betrayal didn't erase the years Henry and I had laughed together, the holidays we'd shared. The ache wasn't love anymore. Not really. It was the phantom pain of realizing that what I thought was solid had been nothing but glass. But slowly another truth was dawning. For years I had lived like I was auditioning for a role in Henry's family, proving my worth, trying to fit, cooking meals his mother liked, dressing for dinners his father respected, pretending to be enough. Now with Henry unraveling, I realized I'd been free of that role the moment I walked away. And freedom, even with an ache attached, was sweeter than approval could ever be. The last straw came from a mutual friend who sent me a shaky phone recording late one night. In it, Maya's voice was sharp, almost mocking. "Your dad's opinions don't matter, Henry. No one cares what old men think about suits. Grow up." Then silence. A pause. And Henry's mother, her voice trembling. Bella always dressed with respect for this family. The recording cut there, but I didn't need to hear more. For the first time in months, I laughed out loud. Not because I wished Henry pain, but because irony had finally come knocking. He had left me to impress his parents, and now his parents missed me. I tucked my phone away, exhaling into the quiet. The ache was still there, but alongside it, something else had started to grow. Strength. I wasn't the girl waiting to be chosen anymore. I was the woman who had walked away. And while Henry's carefully constructed world cracked around him, I was building something new, something real. By late spring, I thought I'd finally cut the last invisible thread between Henry's world and mine. His calls had stopped. The gossip slowed. Even Lily Sweet, conflicted Lily, reached out less, perhaps sensing I needed distance. But then one evening, I came home from work to find an ivory envelope waiting on Clara's counter. She'd signed for it earlier. Thick paper, embossed edges, my name written in looping gold script. Inside was a wedding invitation. "Lily Carter and Matthew Grant, request the honor of your presence." My eyes skimmed down to the details, my pulse quickening. Then I saw it tucked at the bottom of the envelope, a handwritten note. "Bella, please come. Dad keeps asking if you'll be there. You're still family to us. Bring a guest if you want. Love, Lily." I sat down hard, the kitchen chair groaning under the weight of memory. A wedding. Their wedding. Which meant Henry would be there. With Maya. Clara peeked over my shoulder, instantly grinning. Oh, this is delicious. Are you going? I don't know. My fingers tightened on the note. Bella, this is literally fate handing you front row seats to their implosion. I shot her a look. It's not about revenge. She arched a brow. Maybe not for you. But don't you dare pretend you don't want him to see you glowing, thriving, and very much not alone. Her words stung because they were true. That night, I sat with the invitation in my lap, staring at Lily's handwriting. My chest ached with conflicting emotions, affection for Lily, dread, at facing Henry, curiosity about how Maya would act, surrounded by his family. By midnight, I'd made up my mind. I was going. Not for Henry, not even for Lily, but for me. To prove, if only to myself, that I wasn't the woman who had slunk away in shame months ago. I was the woman who had walked away and stayed gone. The next question was simple yet terrifying. Who would I bring? The answer arrived in the form of a text. Adrian still on for Tuesday night volunteer shift. Dr. Adrian Lee, pediatric surgeon. Calm, brilliant, with a sly humor that disarmed me more than I wanted to admit. I'd met him at the Children's Hospital while helping with an evening reading program. He'd teased me for mispronouncing the name of a dinosaur, and I'd teased him back for pretending he knew how to pronounce it correctly. Somehow one conversation turned into coffee, then dinners, then long walks that ended with my cheeks hurting from smiling. I typed back before I could overthink. Yes, and random question. How do you feel about weddings? His reply came less than a minute later. Depends. Open bar. I laughed, tension slipping from my shoulders. Maybe this was exactly what I needed. A week later, I told him everything. Not every ugly detail, but enough to break up Maya, the family's obsession with status. Adrian listened, without judgment, his hand brushing mine across the table. So basically, he said, when I finished, you want me to show up, look devastatingly handsome, and watch your ex implode. I choked on my wine. That's one way of putting it. Bella, say no more. He leaned back, smirking. Do I get to pick the suit, or do you have a stylist in mind? His confidence made my chest feel warm. For the first time, the thought of facing Henry didn't make me shrink. It made me curious. The day of the wedding crept closer. I bought a dress, a deep emerald silk that draped just right, not too flashy, not too modest. Clara approved with a dramatic gasp. He's going to choke on his champagne when he sees you. I practiced calm in the mirror, smoothing my hair, reminding myself, you don't need their approval anymore. You don't need closure. You only need to show yourself that you survived. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming the version of myself. Henry had tried to bury the woman who was never embarrassed to be who she was. The evening of the wedding arrived like a thunderstorm brewing in the distance. Adrian showed up at my door in a perfectly tailored navy suit, tie knotted with surgeon's precision. You clean up well, I teased. He offered his arm with mock solemnity. Shall we go make an ex regret every decision he's ever made? I laughed, nerves dissolving into something closer to excitement. The venue was everything the Carters loved. Crystal chandeliers, orchids, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. The kind of place Henry once swore we'd get married in someday. As Adrian and I walked in, heads turned. Not just because of him, though he looked every bit the polished professional, but because of me. The whispers were immediate, soft, but unmistakable. I spotted Henry across the room instantly. He wore a dark suit that didn't quite fit, right, his tie askew like he hadn't bothered. Maya clung to his arm, her dress fire engine red, too tight, too deliberate. Henry's glass froze halfway to his lips when he saw me. His eyes widened, mouth parting just slightly. Maya followed his gaze, her smile faltering as her grip on him tightened. Adrian leaned down, murmuring so only I could hear, well, that's a reaction. My pulse thrummed in my ears, but instead of shrinking, I straightened my shoulders, looped my arm through Adrian's, and smiled. Because for the first time, I wasn't walking into Henry's world as someone desperate for approval. I was walking in as myself. And the real show was just beginning. The murmurs followed Adrian and me like ripples in water. I could feel eyes tracking us as we crossed the hall, some curious, some envious, some flat-out stunned. Henry's mother was the first to break through the crowd. Bella, she gasped, clasping my hands. Oh my goodness. You look... She stopped herself mid-sentence, blinking at Adrian. Mrs. Carter, I said warmly, this is Dr. Adrian Lee. Adrian, this is Henry's mother. Her lips parted. Dr. Oh, how lovely. What kind of pediatric surgery? Adrian answered smoothly. His smile, just the right amount of humble. Bella actually volunteers at my foundation. The kids adore her. The words slipped off his tongue like silk, practiced yet genuine. Mrs. Carter's eyes misted her grip, tightening on my hands, before she excused herself in a flurry of emotion. Adrian leaned close, whispering, "I think I just stole her heart." I chuckled under my breath. "Careful, she'll want to adopt you." It didn't take long before Lily found me radiant in her wedding gown. She hugged me so tightly I nearly spilled my champagne. "You came," she whispered, relief flooding her voice. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wouldn't have missed it," I said. She leaned back, eyes glinting with mischief as she nodded toward Adrian. "And you brought him. Bella, he's like a Disney prince with a stethoscope." I rolled my eyes. "He's decent." Her laugh rang out before she was pulled away by bridesmaids, leaving me with the image of Henry glowering from across the room, his jaw-tight glass untouched. The cocktail hour swelled with chatter. Adrian charmed cousins, uncles, even Lily's grandmother, who pinched his cheek and declared, "This one's a keeper. This one's a..." Meanwhile, Maya clung to Henry's arm like a lifeline, her smile brittle. I caught snippets of her sharp voice. "These people are so uptight. No one even appreciates my dress." Henry's father, standing stiff nearby, cleared his throat and muttered just loud enough Bella always dressed with elegance. The words hit me like a soft strike of justice. Eventually, Henry cornered me near the dessert table. His glass was half empty, his tie loose, the faint smell of whiskey clinging to his breath. "You upgraded fast," he hissed, his eyes flicking toward Adrian, laughing across the room. I bit into a chocolate strawberry, savoring the sweetness. "Funny. I was thinking the same about you." Color rose in his cheeks. "Maya's just going through a phase I cut in. 6 months of phases. Impressive." His hand tightened on the glass. "You did this to humiliate me." I wiped my fingers on a napkin, calm as ice. "Henry, if I wanted to humiliate you, I would have come alone." His breath caught. For once he had no comeback. During the toasts, I sat beside Adrian as laughter and applause swelled for Lily and her new husband. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Henry fidget, shifting uncomfortably as Maya scrolled through her phone mid-speech. Then came the father-daughter dance. Mr. Carter pulled Lily into his arms, tears glistening as the music swelled. Guests dabbed at their eyes. I glanced toward Henry, only to realize he wasn't even watching. He was gone. Minutes later, a groomsman whispered nearby, "He's outside with the valet guys, smoking, with her." Her meaning, Maya, was clear. I turned back to the dance floor, focusing on Lily's joy instead of Henry's unraveling, because this wasn't about him anymore. Later, as Adrian helped me with my coat, Henry's father intercepted us. His hands trembled as he pulled me into an unexpected embrace. "You look happy, Bella," he muttered. "We miss you at Sunday dinners." Over his shoulder, I saw Henry standing a few feet away, frozen. His eyes were bloodshot, his expression hollow as he watched his father cling to me instead of him. Adrian rested a hand on my back, ready. I nodded. But just as we turned to leave, Henry's voice cracked through the air. "You're leaving already?" Adrian smiled politely. "Early surgery tomorrow. Bella's driving me." The unspoken message hung heavy. He chooses me now. I held Henry's gaze one last time. Not with bitterness, not with longing, just with the quiet certainty of someone who had finally stepped out of the shadow. Then I walked away. Outside, Adrian opened the car door for me. Well, he said lightly that was worth the tux rental. I smirked, glancing back at the glowing hall. Through the glass doors, I saw Henry alone on the steps, Maya nowhere in sight. His shoulders slumped, his face pale under the chandeliers. "Every penny," I whispered, sliding into the seat. As the car pulled away, I realized something: the girl who had once begged for scraps of approval no longer existed, and the woman replacing her had just witnessed the first act of Henry's undoing. The wedding night should have been Henry's victory lap. His family, his sister's new husband, his carefully chosen future on display for all to see. Instead, it became the stage where every mask he wore slipped. The morning after, Clara shoved her phone at me over breakfast. "You need to see this," she said, practically vibrating with glee. On the screen was a grainy clip uploaded by one of Lily's cousins. It showed Henry outside the venue, leaning against a pillar with his tie half undone, a cigarette dangling from his fingers. Maya sat beside him, rolling her eyes and laughing too loudly. The caption read, "When you realize the groom's sister's wedding isn't about you." The comments were brutal. Who smokes at their sister's wedding? Bella aged like wine. Henry aged like milk. I set the phone down, torn between shameful satisfaction and an ache of pity. "Don't feel sorry for him," Clara said firmly. "He made his choice. He wanted shiny. Now shiny is biting back." I knew she was right. Still, it was surreal watching the world finally see what I'd always known, that Henry was never built for the role he pretended to play. In the days that followed, word trickled to me in fragments. Henry's father refused to speak to him after the wedding, angry that he'd disrespected Lily's big day. His mother tried, but every attempt ended in argument. She'd snap at Maya for being dismissive, Maya would retort that they were too provincial to understand, and Henry would sit in silence, caught between defending the woman he chose and the parents he once sought to impress. Meanwhile, Lily texted me late one night, "Dad keeps asking why Adrian doesn't play chess with him on Sundays like you used to. He hasn't touched the board in weeks." The words cut deep. For a moment, I imagined myself back at that kitchen table laughing with Mr. Carter over a clever move, the warmth of being seen as more than enough. But then I remembered Henry's voice, cold and sharp. "My parents would be mortified if I married someone like you." That memory burned away any temptation to slip backward. Adrian noticed the shift in me, too. One evening after his long hospital shift, he came over with takeout. As we sat on the couch, he studied me between bites. "You seem lighter," he said. "Lighter," he nodded, "like you've finally stopped carrying something." I thought about it. He was right. For months, I'd lived with a knot in my chest, a gnawing sense of unfinished business. But standing in that wedding hall, seeing Henry falter while I stood tall, it had untied the knot. "I guess I have," I admitted. Adrian smiled softly. "Good, because the only thing you need to carry now is yourself." I leaned against his shoulder, the weight in my chest dissolving just a little more. But Henry's downfall didn't end with humiliation. It spiraled. A mutual friend messaged me one afternoon, her words practically glowing through the screen. Maya bailed, just packed up and left, said she didn't sign up to babysit a man with no drive. I blinked at the text, then laughed. Not a cruel laugh, just a weary, incredulous one. This was the man who had traded me in for connections, and now even those connections had walked out, leaving him with nothing but smoke and ashes. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd once thought Henry was the one with all the power. He had the family name, the shiny future, the polished facade. And me, I was the one scrambling to keep up to prove I was worthy. But now the balance had shifted. His parents, once the standard I failed to meet, were quietly reaching out through Lily, dropping hints that they missed me. His sister, radiant in her new life, leaned on me for advice more than she leaned on him. Even his friends whispered about his mistakes. And me, I wasn't the cast-off anymore. I was the one who'd walked away intact. One evening, while Adrian was reading at my kitchen table, I pulled out a shoebox I'd hidden in the back of the closet. Inside was Henry's final voicemail, the one I hadn't deleted. I pressed play. His voice trembled thick with regret. "Bella, it's over with Maya. I think I made a mistake. Please, I need to see you." I watched Adrian out of the corner of my eye as the recording filled the air. He didn't look up, didn't interrupt, just quietly reached across the table and slid his hand into mine. When the voicemail ended, I exhaled. That's the last time he'll get to speak to me. Adrian squeezed my hand, then delete it. I shook my head. No, I need it. Why? Because it reminds me how far I've come. He nodded, understanding without judgment. Later that night, I dreamed again. This time, not of Henry smiling, but of myself. Standing tall in that wedding hall, Adrian at my side, Henry shrinking into the shadows. Henry. When I woke, sunlight streamed across my sheets, warm and golden. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel haunted. I felt free. Henry had once made me feel small, insignificant, disposable. But watching his carefully curated world collapse, I realized something profound. I had been the one with power all along. Not because I'd hurt him back. Not because I'd flaunted Adrian or impressed his family. But because I had chosen myself. And that choice would always weigh more than his rejection. It had been weeks since the wedding, and Henry had gone eerily quiet. No texts, no calls, no whispers from friends. I should have felt relief, and part of me did, but another part waited like a storm cloud on the horizon. I knew silence was never the end, not with Henry. The storm broke on a Sunday afternoon. I was in my kitchen, still wearing one of Adrian's t-shirts, flipping pancakes, while Adrian read the paper at the table. The intercom buzzed, suddenly sharp and insistent. Clara's voice echoed in my memory. He'll come crawling back eventually. They always do. I pressed the screen, and there he was. Henry, not in a crisp suit, not with Maya on his arm. Just Henry, hollow-eyed in a hoodie and sneakers, his hair unkempt. For the first time, he didn't look like the man who had thrown me away. He looked like a boy who'd lost everything. "Bella, please." His voice cracked through the speaker. I need to talk to you." Adrian glanced up from the paper, his brow arched. Want me to handle it? I kissed his cheek lightly. No, I've got it. I met Henry in the lobby. The air smelled faintly of floor polish and rain from the morning storm. He shoved his hands in his hoodie pocket, shoulders hunched. You changed your number, he muttered. Yeah, I crossed my arms. That was the point. He flinched at the coldness. You look good. I know. Silence stretched between us, thick with things unsaid. Finally, he exhaled, his voice cracking. Maya was a mistake. I didn't answer, just let the words hang. I thought she was everything my parents wanted, but she never cared. About me. About them. She laughed at me, Bella. Mocked me. And when I needed her when my dad got sick, she wasn't there. His eyes were glassy now. For a flicker of a moment, I saw the man I once loved, vulnerable and lost. I miss you, he whispered. Not just because of her. Because of you. The way you cared. The way you showed up. No one has ever. His voice broke. No one has ever loved me the way you did. The ache in my chest returned sharp as the night he'd first told me I wasn't enough. Henry, I said quietly, what do you want me to say? Tell me there's a chance. His eyes searched mine desperately. Tell me you miss me too. That you'll... No. The word fell like a stone final and absolute. His face crumpled. No, that's it after everything. After everything I cut in my voice steady, you think I'd let you make me your backup plan? You didn't just end us, Henry. You destroyed the version of me who believed your opinion determined my worth. I buried that girl the night I walked out. Tears welled in his eyes. Real ones this time, not the polished crocodile tears he used to conjure when he wanted sympathy. His voice trembled. So that's it. You're really done. I thought about the voicemail I'd saved about the wedding, about his mother's hug and his father's silence. I thought about the shoebox of trinkets I'd left on his doorstep the cold nights on Clara's couch, the mornings where I forced myself not to answer. And then I thought about Adrian upstairs waiting for me, calm and steady, the kind of man who didn't measure love in status but in presence. Yes, I said softly. I am really done. Henry swayed slightly as if the word itself had struck him. He wiped his face roughly, bitterness flashing through his tears. Is it him? He demanded. The doctor. I almost laughed but stopped myself. This isn't about Adrian. It's about you. You realizing too late what you had. But Henry, I stepped back, my voice firm. I don't owe you closure, and I will never be your safety net. For the first time, Henry didn't argue. He just crumpled onto the lobby bench, his head in his hands. His shoulders shook with sobs, raw and unrestrained, the kind he'd never let me see before. I turned toward the elevator, each step echoing louder than his cries. When the doors closed behind me, I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. Upstairs, Adrian looked up as I entered. He didn't ask what had happened. He just slid a plate of pancakes toward me and kissed the top of my head. Everything okay? Better than okay, I murmured, sinking into the chair. It's finally over. He smiled, and for the first time in years, I felt the truth settle deep in my bones. I was no one's second choice. I was my own first. 6 months passed after that Sunday in the lobby. 6 months since Henry had sat there broken begging while I walked away. In those months, life quietly, beautifully rebuilt itself around me. Henry moved to another city. I heard the news through Lily tucked casually into one of her texts about newlywed life. He says it's a fresh start, she wrote, but I could read the truth between the lines. It wasn't a fresh start. It was running away. Lily and I stayed close. She sent me holiday cards, photos of her and Matthew decorating their first Christmas tree, updates on her new job. Sometimes she'd mention her parents, how her father still missed our Sunday chess matches, how her mother regretted letting Henry dictate who was good enough. I never replied to those parts. Some wounds didn't need reopening. As for me, Adrian and I grew into something steady, something warm. He moved into my apartment that winter. The space that once felt temporary, Clara's couch, borrowed comfort, was now ours. Adrian's medical textbooks piled beside my nightstand, his stethoscope draped carelessly over the coat rack. Our mornings filled with the smell of coffee and burnt toast. His fault, not mine. Our nights with laughter spilling across the living room as we shared stories from our wildly different worlds. Sometimes he'd catch me staring at him when he wasn't looking, marveling at how gentle love could be when it wasn't built on proving yourself worthy. But there were moments, quiet and unguarded, when the past tugged at me. One rainy evening, while Adrian was still at the hospital, I pulled out the shoebox again. Inside, tucked beneath an old scarf, was my phone with Henry's saved voicemail. I pressed play. Bella, it's over with Maya. I think I made a mistake. Please, I need to see you. His voice cracked, raw, desperate. For a long time, I used to play it as a reminder of my strength, the proof that I had been the one to walk away. But now, hearing it again, it felt different. Not like power, not like victory. Just sad. Sad that he had never known how to hold love without breaking it. Sad that I had wasted years auditioning for a role I should never have wanted. And sad that the girl in me who once loved him had been made to feel small. I tucked the voicemail away for the last time this time, not to savor it, but to bury it. Because I no longer needed Henry's regret to validate my worth. I had my own life to measure that by now. One Sunday morning, I found myself walking past the old cafe where Henry and I used to sit nursing cheap coffees and pretending we had the world figured out. The sight of it didn't sting anymore. It felt like walking past a house you once lived in, a place that shaped you, but no longer belonged to you. I smiled at the memory, not with longing, but with gratitude. Gratitude that I had survived it. Gratitude that I had grown. That night, Adrian and I hosted Clara for dinner. She brought a bottle of wine and her sharp tongue as always. To new beginnings, she toasted, raising her glass. To freedom, I added. Adrian grinned. To Bella, who finally stopped collecting red flags like souvenirs. We all laughed, the sound rich and full, bouncing off the walls of a home that felt alive. Later, after Clara left, Adrian and I curled on the couch. He rested his head against mine, his voice low. Do you ever think about him anymore? I thought carefully before answering. Yes, but not in the way you think. I don't miss him. I don't want him back. I just remember who I was then, and I never want to be that girl again. Adrian kissed the top of my head. You won't. You've outgrown her. And I knew he was right, because that was the real freedom. Not watching Henry crumble, not parading Adrian at the wedding, not even hearing his broken pleas in the lobby. The real freedom was knowing I no longer needed his validation, that I no longer lived for the approval of people who thought love was a resume to be checked. The real freedom was waking up every morning in a life I built myself with someone who chose me, not because of what I could offer, but because of who I was. Sometimes when the city hums outside and I catch Adrian humming while chopping vegetables, I close my eyes and breathe it all in. The warmth, the peace, the quiet certainty that I am exactly where I belong. And I smile because the girl who once left in the dead of night with a duffel bag never imagined she would end up here.